Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Journey to Virtuous. I'm your host, Sean Pearson, and today we are choosing to talk about a topic that is one that I pray will break some stereotypes. I pray will give permission for not only our young adults, but our middle aged and older, and even adolescents and teens to seek out the right support that they need for a specific need, and that is mental health. We are witnessing so many tragic things that are happening at the hands of our children, at the hands of our young adults, and even adults because of the need for mental health support that is going unaddressed. And today I have with us a college student, a young adult, and I'm hoping that out of the mouths of babes, out of the mouths of some of our young people, we can actually hear why mental health and treatment for mental health issues is so important. This guest is Miss Ajanae Rainey. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I want you, well, first of all, thank you for being willing to come on the show and have the courage to actually talk about such a sensitive topic. Typically, we have shows that we speak to mental health professionals, people that have gone to school and they have these books that they've written and they have, all of these things that they've done on an expert level. But I really wanted you to speak from the heart as a young adult who has both gone on to thrive beyond some experiences that you'll share with the rest of our audience. But I think it's important for our audience to hear from everyday people and especially young future leaders how important it is to address our mental health as parents, as grandparents, and just as individuals so that we can be better for the people that we love. And so thank you for having the courage to come on the show. I didn't share Ajane is actually, as I said, a college student, but her major is psychology. And so I want you to talk to us. Start by telling us, who is Ajane?
So my name is Ajanae. I am a college student and I am 18 and I do have like a passion for helping people and stuff about like when it comes to mental health, but I'm working on it cuz I have to get my degree first and everything, but yeah.
Okay. Tell me about what gave you that passion. What was it about your life?
I did notice like a lot of stigmas about mental health, and it wasn't really like when I was younger, but like I just started noticing it. Just there's a lot of stigmas about mental health that make people not want to get help. And I also think that um, once I get my degree, I want to help people find their purpose and lead them, like help them find what they want to do throughout life and not just the fact that they have, a mental illness or something's like up with their mental health. So I think that's why I kind of chose that path.
Okay. I know that you share with me that in your journey, you've had both the experience of witnessing mental health issues in your family, as well as being able to be around mental health professionals um, that were actually in the field and treating others. So, tell me a little bit about um, what you've experienced from the perspective of mental health.
Um, I would say that I experienced it firsthand, like something mental health wise, like a mental illness. And it was pretty hard throughout my life. It brought me like a lot of like problems, even though like I wasn't the one like with the mental illness.
Hmm.
It brought me a lot of like problems and traumas and everything, but as I started learning about it in college, like it helped me understand more.
Hmm.
And I was I was more understanding as well, like going through stuff, but uh I understood it more when as I was learning about it. So
Okay. And I know that you have within because of what we've shared. I know that the journey of a young person that is experiencing mental health challenges, by a loved one or a caregiver. That was my same journey. My mother had mental health that was untreated, and that was very difficult for me as a child, and then coming into my teenage years. And I found myself wanting to always be the perfect child, to not create any more stress for my mother in different situations. And I had siblings as well. And so, again, I commend you for being 18 and having the kind of foresight and insight that you do with mental health and the desire to want to address it. Um, I'd like for you to talk to us about being on a college campus, and mental health being one of those things that um, is often masked by drugs and alcohol or different addictions that people will develop. When you're recognizing the pain of your peers, what is that like through your lens, and what kind of advice or what kind of support do you try and provide for them?
So what I've noticed is a lot of kids start using like those type of um things to I don't really know if it's just the feeling that they like from it or if it's like a mental health thing, but I noticed that a lot of kids start doing that at like middle school. And
Like drugs and alcohol?
yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yes, and I think that a lot of it is because some kids like do go through things at home and stuff, and they don't really have the support they need. And for people to say like, oh, like you can't do that, and they don't know, no one's ever really told them like anything about that or the effects of it. And that's why I think that a lot of kids start that doing that at a young age,
Mhm.
and also because a lot of children do go through stuff. So, and I don't think that teachers and a lot of the peers around them, like adults, really understand that. They mostly just shame kids for doing
Mm,
things. And I think that they need to help them, but instead of shaming them, they're too busy saying, oh, like, don't do this, don't do that, you're in trouble, but they're not really helping them steer away from it. So,
okay.
yeah.
What were the things that you used to cope with having troubles? Because you mentioned that you had some traumas in your childhood as a result of someone else having mental health challenges. How did you cope? How did you get through those seasons?
Yeah. So I I did things that like I liked doing, like dancing, reading. I wrote a lot. Yeah, I wrote a lot. Whenever I was upset about something, I just I wrote it down. Like mainly when I was younger. I don't really do it now, but definitely when I was like younger, probably from middle school to like my sophomore year of high school, I would just write it down. It wouldn't really be I don't want to say it was like a positive way of doing it because I did write down like pretty negative things,
Mhm.
but that's just how I like got it out of my system.
Okay.
So that's how I coped with things like whenever something upset me or someone upset me.
Hmm.
But dancing did also really help. It's a good way to let out your emotions. A lot of there's like a really the thing I like about dance is every dance can have a concept and a story and everything,
Okay.
and you can always see the emotion someone brings into the dance. That's why dance teachers always like, "Where's your facials?" Like, you need
Okay.
to show some emotion
Okay.
because you can't really just dance with a straight face. Like,
Okay.
you need to have emotion with it, and a lot of people like that dance have it naturally because like you can tell that there's like something they're going through,
Mhm.
and so they just naturally have that facial expression because they're letting out their emotions through dance. So I definitely did that when I started dancing like my sophomore year of high school, but I was pretty much self-taught like before that because I enjoyed dancing a lot like
Okay.
before I started high school.
Okay.
So,
So for the various audience of people, I want to ask you to explore through the lens of having been that teenager. You're still a teen, but you've entered young adulthood. You're in a young adult environment at college. For that adolescent or that teen, what advice would you give them for when they're hurting or they're going through something? Because there's so much that's happening in our society where our children don't have an outlet, and we're seeing the impact of that through school shootings. We're seeing the impact of this through just violence at house parties and these different environments that in my generation they were fun places and spaces and at least safe spaces and places for our children to be. But our young people are hurting, and for whatever reason my generation and those coming behind me, we're not handling that very well, we're not managing it very well. And so I'm asking you to speak to me, to give us some advice from the lens of that young teen. Think about your 12, 13, 14-year old and the journey that you had during that time when you were hurting. What are the things you wished adults around you were noticing, or what are the things you wish that they would say to reach out to you?
So I think that a lot of like people that are not in the same like not in my generation, they don't they more so like to like shame like our generation for stuff, and I've heard like pretty crazy things that, has been said about our generation and everything. And I will say that we do wild things sometimes, but
Mhm,
I think that there's also a part where like we just need more um resources and safe spaces for our generation,
mhm,
because we have been through a lot.
mhm,
And I think that the resources and safe spaces will help at least make us better people. And I wish that people in older generations are more like, I don't want to say understanding, because I don't sympathize for people that do bad things,
mhm.
but I will say that they're more like nicer to people that don't do anything at all, instead of grouping us all as just one person.
Okay. So what are some of the crazy things you've heard said about your generation,
Um,
or things that work your nerves when you hear it? It's just like, I'm so tired of them labeling us this.
yes, so they call us stupid all the time. Like I've it's mostly on social media, but they'll say like, "Oh, we're stupid and we don't know like anything about this or anything about that." And I actually like got to vote this election, but I've heard a lot of like people in older generations say that, "Oh, we don't need to vote because we have the views that they don't want us to have, and we're
Mm,
on social media too much," which I can't agree. I'm always on social media, but I think that a lot of people learn from certain things that they see on social media,
mhm,
and some things aren't true, and then there's some things that are. And I think that if us as a generation, we take something that we see and we just do our research on it, then we can like use that as, our whatever we saw from social media. But I think that if we do that, then we'll be fine. But I think that they just call us stupid because we just don't have the same views as them. We didn't grow up in the same times as them, so we don't have the same like we don't see eye to eye basically.
okay. You mentioned something interesting. This was your first year to vote. How did that feel?
It felt good, but the it felt good to vote this year. Like I've always watched like my family and stuff like watched like the voting, like debates and everything, and I've
Mhm,
always learned from them.
mhm.
And I do always say like we should have an individuality and not get from like our family, but I think that it it really just depends on what you believe is right and what you believe is wrong. So
Okay. Um, what is your why for voting? Why did you think it was important? Because I do know that's another thing that I hear, that young people aren't necessarily interested in voting, or that they're not well informed enough to be voting. So what motivated you to want to be part of this year's election, the presidential election in particular?
yes, so this election was definitely kind of wild, and I feel like more people should have voted, because a lot of people feel like, "Oh, my vote doesn't count because of like the electoral
Mm-hmm.
college."
Mm-hmm.
But people don't understand that the more people that vote, the more, like it'll be like a move for our state to get whatever whoever they wanted.
Okay.
But I think that people should just do some like more research. Like our generation, that's I feel like that is kind of what we lack is not really doing research on things and just going off of what they heard or what their family heard
Mhm.
and everything. And so I feel like they just say, "Oh, I didn't do enough research, so I'm not voting this election." But I think that that's what we should do more better on is just doing our research and trying to make a difference.
Okay. So I'm gonna go back to our original subject of mental health. As I shared, we are even seeing suicides in children under the age of 10, which is tragic to me. It's an indication that there's a whole lot of pain that our country just is not addressing. And I know you shared that there was mental health, the need for mental health care in your family. Has it impacted you? Are you comfortable sharing with us? Has it impacted you in your household? Has it impacted you with your parents personally, your grandparents, or how close was that to you?
So because of like mental health and everything, I was really close with my grandparents
Okay.
and I kind of like grew up with them. I feel like they're really important like people to me.
Okay.
And so are my parents, but I just grew up around my grandparents a lot, so I just feel really comfortable with them all the time.
Okay.
And as for my parents, their mental health, like I don't really have like a strong relationship with either of them.
Mhm.
And I felt like me and my parents don't really have that bond because of their mental health and everything and
Okay.
like also like the decisions that they try to like they make. So
Okay.
I just feel like that's why that's why I like went through some of the things that I've been through
Mhm.
and I have an understanding for them, but I'm more close to my grandparents because
Okay.
of it.
You hold a very interesting perspective because there are a number of young people that I know that aren't necessarily compassionate or empathetic toward their parents. Even some adults that I know who experienced having a parent who had mental illness, whether it was treated or untreated, they are as adults still have an animosity or resentment toward their parents, but I don't see you expressing that. I just heard you say that you are understanding or sympathetic to that, even though you don't have the close relationship that you would like to. How did you get to that place? Can you share how you were able to still be loving toward your parents?
Um I've always noticed like stigmas with mental health and everything. And I didn't want to be that kind of person that would say, "Oh, you're crazy." I don't like the word crazy at
Mhm.
all. I feel like it's just a really like mean thing to say about people cuz they can't really control what their brain. Like it's
Okay.
just the psychology is like the study of the brain and I
Hmm.
it made me realize that it's their brain. It's not them as a person.
Okay.
So it yeah, it just made me I'm really understanding because I don't really want to say like, "Oh, I don't like my parents for whatever they did," but
Hmm.
it's really just of how they were their their environment that they grew up around
Hmm.
and like what kind of parents their
Hmm.
parents were and
Hmm.
also um just like the traumas that they could have went through like
Okay.
it all like is a connection that makes up someone's like mental health
Okay.
and that's just it just made me be more understanding towards it instead of just pushing that to the side because I feel like a lot of people some well not a lot of people but some people probably do know that like if they don't like their parents they know that they have mental health issues and
Hmm.
stuff and they don't really take the time to do research on that mental health issue and
Hmm.
um like I don't know how to explain it but like just understand their parents more and it doesn't mean that they have to like be like have like a good bond with them if they're really upset about something they did but I feel like it's they should at least try to understand a little piece of it.
Was there any for you, you mentioned how some adults will shame your generation. Did you feel any was that an emotion that you experienced with having mental illness with your parents? Was there any level of shame for you as a young person, or is there now?
I think that, so if I'm gonna be honest, like, there were times where, like, I would be really upset and I'd be like, "Oh, I don't wanna talk to, like, my parents, and I don't wanna associate with them." Like, I'd be upset, like, cause people do, messed up things and say messed up things sometimes, and it's just kind of how everybody's thought process goes
Okay.
when they're upset. But I feel like a lot of people don't really understand when someone's upset at their parents, because a lot of people in older generations, they just think about oh, you should always, you should never really be mad at your parents. Like, that's kind of
Mm,
how I felt like I grew up. Like, I always felt like I wasn't really allowed to be upset at my
upset.
parents.
Okay.
And like, I get like the respect thing. I always respect everybody, but I always feel like I shouldn't be like really provoked either. So
Okay.
I felt like I would always like be upset. I mean, not upset. I'd always be like bad for being mad at my parents and stuff.
Okay. So you felt a level of like you weren't allowed to express the emotion of being disappointed in them or being angry with them as you went through what you went through. Thank you for sharing that. That I think is a common emotion that your generation probably feels, and maybe they don't have permission to express that emotion. That definitely was something from my generation. We weren't allowed to, children were seen and not heard. And so we could experience something that might be very traumatic, but we weren't allowed to respond to it or express how we felt about it. And so that's something that I can relate to. But I'm glad that you're taking this moment today to be an example for the rest of us. I think it takes a very unique spirit and a definite kind of wisdom to still have the kind of grace that you have toward your parents. And I hope that it can be an example to other young people, young adults in particular, because we've done some messed up stuff as old people. And I think trauma informs how we raise our children. Trauma informs every decision that we make in reality at any age. But what I'm witnessing is young adults of your generation and the generations behind me, because we never addressed our trauma. There are cycles that have been repeated. And so I see you making a very deliberate effort to break a cycle of mental illness and the way that trauma impacts a family. One, by studying to understand the disease of mental illness, and then two, showing grace to the adults in your life, not just your parents, but the people around you that may be suffering from mental illness, because we've talked about it in other episodes before. Mental illness is no different than having a broken limb. If we had a broken arm or a broken leg, we're going to go see a doctor. We're going to go get the treatment that we need. But for whatever reason, and maybe it's only socially, but the stigma around going to get some help when there's a mental health trauma, when our brain has been impacted either by a trauma or just some neurological condition that prevents us from being the best us that we can be. We're afraid to go get that help, or we're ashamed to go get that help. And so I just want to encourage you all, having experienced extreme anxiety, having the journey in my own life of being a survivor of a suicide attempt, it is okay to go get help for your mental health. The trauma is not your identity. It's an experience that can be used to strengthen you, can be used to encourage others that come behind that trauma if you're willing to share your story. And so I thank you, Ajane, for being willing to share your story. I want you to tell us, as we prepare to leave our audience, what's next for you. I know you're in college, you're focused on, your degree in psychology. What do you plan to do with that degree, and what do you plan to do the next couple of years?
So it's my journey is gonna be a really long time, because I do plan on getting like a master's degree,
Okay.
and maybe if I decide to, I'll probably get more than that.
Okay.
But I do want to use my knowledge like about psychology and mental health and everything to help other people guide their way and find like their purpose.
Okay.
Because a lot of people with like mental illnesses just feel like they just label themselves as someone with that mental illness and not someone that can make a difference and have a passion for something. So,
Okay. Thank you for that. I thank you for being on the show. I plan to bring you back to hear more about the journey and what you're doing, those great things, and certainly to encourage some other young adults to vote and be a part of our political processes. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for being here with us today. I thank you for hearing Ajanae's story about what she's doing to break some cycles of mental illness in her family. We will see you all next time. Thank you for joining me on my podcast, A Journey to Virtuous. Please like and subscribe. If you'd like to know more about the work that I'm doing, please visit me on social media at thezioninstitute.org or Whisper Consulting, or also Sean Pearson Journey Coach. You can also find me on one of my websites, thezioninstitute.org, THEZIONINSTITUTE.org, or whisperconsulting.com. That's WISPHER consulting.com. Thank you for your support.